Thanksgiving morning started before sunrise. At exactly 5 a.m., my mom was already in the kitchen. She had been planning this dinner for almost 2 weeks because 14 people were coming to our house. There was a turkey roasting in the oven, mashed potatoes simmering on the stove, homemade rolls rising beside the window, and 3 different pies cooling on the counter. Mom barely sat down once. Every time I walked into the kitchen, she was doing something else. "Mom, please take a break," I told her. She smiled and said, "Everyone only gets together like this once in a while. I just want everything to be perfect." By noon, the entire house smelled incredible. The dining room table was covered with food, and everyone had finally arrived, including my older brother Daniel and his wife, Rachel. Rachel walked through the front door, wearing an expensive dress and carrying a small purse. She looked around the house and smiled. "Wow," she said, "your mom really went all out." Mom smiled proudly and replied, "I just wanted everyone to have a nice Thanksgiving." Dinner was amazing. Everyone complimented Mom's cooking. My uncle asked for the turkey recipe. My cousins went back for seconds. And even Daniel said, "Mom, this is probably the best turkey you've ever made." Mom laughed. And although she looked completely exhausted, she was happy. She had spent the entire day making sure everyone else was comfortable and well fed. After dinner, everyone moved into the living room. People were talking, laughing, and watching football. Mom finally sat down on the couch. For the first time all day, she had a plate of pie in front of her and a few quiet minutes to herself. Then Rachel suddenly stood up and looked toward the kitchen. She pointed at the mountain of dirty dishes and said, "Someone should probably clean that up." The room went quiet for a moment. I looked at Rachel and said, "Yeah, someone probably should." Rachel looked directly at me and said, "I thought you could do it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Me?" I asked. She shrugged and said, "Well, you're all ready, dressed casually." I looked over at Mom. Her smile had completely disappeared. She quietly put her fork down. Before I could respond, Daniel spoke up. "Rachel, Mom has been cooking since 5 this morning." Rachel rolled her eyes and said, "I know. That's why I didn't ask her." I stood up and looked at her. "Then why are you asking anyone? You haven't helped once." Rachel's expression immediately changed. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" she asked. "Nothing," I replied. "I'm just asking why the person who cooked for 14 people all day is sitting here while the person who arrived at noon is giving orders." Nobody said a word. Then my uncle slowly stood up and said, "I'll help with the dishes." My aunt stood up too and said, "So will I." Within seconds, several other family members were on their feet, heading toward the kitchen. Rachel looked embarrassed, but instead of apologizing, she grabbed her purse. "This family always makes me feel unwelcome," she said. Daniel sighed and replied, "Rachel, that's not what happened." She walked toward the front door, but before leaving, she stopped and turned around. She looked directly at Mom and said, "Next year, maybe don't cook so much if you're going to expect everyone to feel guilty about it." That was when Mom finally spoke. She looked at Rachel calmly and said, "I don't expect anyone to feel guilty." She paused for a moment and continued, "I just expected my family to appreciate the person who spent all day making their Thanksgiving special." Rachel didn't say anything. She simply walked out the door. Daniel stayed behind and looked at Mom. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Mom gave him a small smile and replied, "It's okay." Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I found Mom back in the kitchen putting leftovers into containers. I walked over and gently took the container from her. "You're done," I said. She laughed and replied, "I'm never done." I smiled and said, "Yes, you are. Tonight, you're sitting down." She looked at me for a moment, then smiled. "You know what?" she said. "Next Thanksgiving, we're ordering pizza." We both started laughing. And honestly, it might have been the best Thanksgiving idea we'd ever had. Because Thanksgiving was never supposed to be about one person doing everything while everyone else watched. It was supposed to be about family, gratitude, and being there for each other. And sometimes, the most important thing you can serve at the dinner table isn't food. It's respect.